Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Al-Hijrah. Welcome to Friends Over 50. Thank you for being here. If you've been coming to this session, this is our last session of Friends Over 50 until the fall. We start up again in the fall on September 5th. Some of the topics that we have scheduled are your aging eyes and how to take care of your vision as you age, diabetes, prevention and care, flu prevention. We'll also offer free flu shots that day, and elder law, things that you need to know about the law as you age and you're preparing to age. So we have a full schedule in the fall, and that starts again on September 5th. So mark your calendars for that. Although today is the last day of Friends Over 50, our older program, next Thursday, just 1 week from today, we do have one more session. It's not just for our seniors, but it's a special session on kinship care. Kinship care. If you are raising a child for a family member or friend, this is called kinship care. And we're fortunate in Fairfax County to have a kinship care institute that offers support services for you. Resources for you and support groups if you need help. If you're finding yourself in new territory, maybe you're a grandmother or an aunt or uncle raising the child of a family member, this is a terrific organization that provides resources for you. So please also mark your calendar to come back next Thursday. Even if this doesn't pertain to you, you may know someone in this situation and you can share these resources with them. It's at the same time, same format, so we'll gather at 10:30 for light breakfast and socializing, and then our speaker will talk from 11 to 12. I want to tell you about a couple of other upcoming things. We have a special health day. I know that you're aware that we have health days, community health days, every Saturday from noon to 3. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of launching our community health days. So on May 4th, that last Saturday before Ramadan, very special health day. It will be here in the courtyard and bigger than our usual health day. We have several small presentations preparing the body for Ramadan, screenings that you should get at certain ages, diabetes prevention, medication management. We have dental screenings that day in addition to our normal blood pressure and sugar screenings. We have some free giveaways. I know you love giveaways. So all of that is going on from noon to 3 in the courtyard on Saturday, May 4th. Please let everyone know about that. Also, last year we learned that as we moved into Ramadan and summer when people travel, we didn't have a lot of folks coming to our health days. So this year we're trying something new. We're just going to have one each month during the summer. But each of those monthly health days will be bigger and we'll have a special screening. They'll also be here in the courtyard. We'll have our normal screenings, but we're also going to have dental screenings. The Prevention of Blindness Society of Washington, D.C. is going to be here offering vision screenings, as well as school and sports physicals. If you have school-age children that need physicals for school, we're offering those for free. They're on Saturdays. They're one Saturday each month. And the best way to follow these events and be sure about the dates and time is to follow our social services Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, please follow D-A-H, Social Services. And you'll see all of our events, class registrations, everything that's going on at Al-Hijrah from social services. Also, please remember while you're online to follow the Al-Hijrah YouTube channel. Brother Yusuf records all of these sessions. And if you have older folks at home who can't make it here, if they're homebound, this is a great resource. They can just go to the YouTube channel and watch all of our presentations. Last year, we had over 500 people come to these sessions, Friends Over 50, and another 500 watched the recorded sessions. So if you missed something, you want to go back for more detail, or as I said, you have someone at home, please think about that. And a reminder, too, our speakers have been really generous about bringing extra information. Each week, they bring lots of information about their organization and events that are going on and things that you need to know. So please be sure you visit this table today and take a look at what we have up here. This is all free for you to take as much as you want for yourself, or as I said, if you have someone at home. Okay, we're going to get started today. I want to introduce our speaker. His name is Pat Killeen. Patrick has his master's in public health from the University of Michigan. He has 40 years of experience in healthcare administration and insurance, and he's now a volunteer with AARP, the American Association of Retired People. As you know, we've had presentations from AARP volunteers in the past, 5 Pillars of Brain Health, Social Security 101. These have been really popular presentations, and I know today is going to be a good one as well.
My name is Patrick Killeen. Most of my friends call me Pat. That's an Irish name, by the way, Patrick Killeen. And just to talk a little bit about AARP and a little bit about myself before I get into the power plant. I'm an Irish American, raised Catholic. I developed a passion for the issue of family caregiving and preparing for care. You've all got the brochure, the booklet, Prepare to Care. When my brother and sister and I had to take care of our parents as they aged. And their two situations were very different. My dad, at the age of 67, developed a brain tumor, a very aggressive brain tumor, glioblastoma. They still don't have a cure for them. It's what Senator John McCain died from last year. And it takes you out in about a year. So that was a fairly compact, that was not really, it was about 1 year. And Dad went downhill over that year. And the hospice people were great. My parents lived in Springfield, Virginia at that time. And Hospice of Arlington, which is now bigger, it's like all of Northern Virginia. They were very helpful to us as a family. And so that, as Dad went downhill and became bedridden, my brother, sister, mother, and I were trained by the hospice people on how to take care for a bedridden person. All the needs, bathing, changing, toileting, everything. And then Mom's case was entirely different. Mom was the most intelligent person in our entire extended family. And she often, when we were real small, she didn't work, but then she went back to work when we got into high school, brother and sister and I. And Mom was like an executive secretary or an administrative associate to people who had a lot of responsibility. Like one woman was in charge of an agency in the school district in Pittsburgh. Another one, after they moved down here, was a contracts office for a major research foundation. And Mom made her bosses look very good, okay? She was a self-educated woman. And the house at home ran like clockwork. Okay, we all had our jobs and our duties every week, and we took care of those things. And in fact, when I left this morning, I was running a little late and I didn't make my bed, and I felt guilty about it. I live alone. I mean, I'll make it when I get home. But that was the kind of training we had. Well, Mom was very intelligent, and she was a high school graduate, but she was self-educated. She was an avid reader, and she inspired us to read as kids. And so, and I will mention this. What happened to Mom is she had a series of these little strokes. There's a word for them. I forget what it is. But they're little strokes in the forehead or in the side of the head. And over a 20-year period, we saw her intelligence taken away from her. It was a form of dementia. It was not Alzheimer's because she remembered us. And she was very affectionate and loving towards us. So we didn't lose her, but she lost her intelligence and her ability to run things the way she did. And that was hard. That was hard on her. When she couldn't pay her own bills anymore and one of us had to take that over, that was very difficult for Mom. And it went on, but she died at the age of 91. And it really made my brother and sister and me closer. Even though, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, there were times of tension in the family, but it really brought us closer together. Now I have to tell you, Mom ended up retiring in Pittsburgh, and she spent the last 6 months of her life in a nursing home. We kept her out of a nursing home until the last 6 months. And but my brother's in Seattle, my sister was in Philadelphia then, and I was in Michigan, and we're doing this long distance. which so happens in these modern American families, and we'll cover that a little bit later. But the nursing home called me. Mom was 91. Pat, your mother passed away today about an hour ago. She was sitting up reading a book after lunch, and she just slumped over. And I thought, perfect. The only thing would have been better if one of us was there holding her hand. She died reading a book. That's what she told me. She told us that when she was a kid, she used to crack open the door to the hallway when she was in bed so she could read. And she wasn't allowed to do that, but she was reading while she was in bed as a kid. So anyhow, that's some of the background. Oh, about AARP. AARP. It's no longer the American Association of Retired Persons. It's just AARP, and the RP stands for Real Possibilities. It's a rebranding, okay? The organizations from time to time rebrand themselves. And but it is an advocacy group for people age 50 and over and provides services for people 50 and over. AARP is not for profit, okay? We do have a for-profit subsidiary, AARP Inc., that endorses products like insurance products, like maybe some hearing aids, some other service for older people. That for-profit subsidiary, when it pays taxes, and then whatever profits are left, they turn over to the not-for-profit sign, which is where I work as a volunteer, and we use that to do good things. They'll cover my mileage driving here today, okay? And I didn't have to stay overnight at a hotel because I live in this area, but if I had to, they would cover that. There's also an AARP Foundation, which is a charitable subsidiary, or in tax terms, some of you may be familiar with the expression 501c3. That's a charity. If you contribute to that, you can deduct it on your taxes. And so they have a charitable subsidiary. But AARP provides all kinds of services for people, in addition to public speakers like me. Caregiving is something that you'll see in here. There's a national, this brochure, this booklet, which I'm giving to you free today, and we have additional copies, was published by AARP, by the non-for-profit part, even though the income came from the for-profit part of AARP. AARP is not an insurance company, okay? That sometimes, AARP does endorse insurance products, particularly health insurance, Medicare supplement products, and then it gets money from that and it uses it to do good things. AARP we are political, but we are not partisan, okay? We are political insofar as we are an advocacy group for the over 50 age population, and we have a progressive agenda, no question about it. We are progressive. But we don't contribute to political parties. We don't contribute any money. We don't have one of those PAC funds. So we're not we're not like the National Rifle Association, okay, which has money that contributes to candidates. We don't have that. We don't endorse candidates. We stay strictly nonpartisan. And sometimes we're confused because we have a progressive agenda. Some people think we're part of the Democratic Party. No, we're not part of the Democratic Party. We don't endorse the Democratic Party. We don't endorse Democratic candidates, but we'll work with whoever, as our ally on progressive causes in Congress and in Richmond. So that's a little bit about AARP. Why don't we get into the slide? Yes. Oh, yes, ma'am. How we work with Congress? Okay. First of all, we have 38 million members. The question was, how do we work with Congress? How does AARP work with Congress? By the way, you notice I just say AARP. It's too hard to say AARP all the time. And I never could, when I first became a volunteer, they didn't allow us to say ARP. They said, that sounds like a frog croaking, ARP. Then they put it in their national commercials. But, I just usually say AARP. How we work with Congress? Okay, first of all, we inform elected officials. Okay, we have AARP has what they call National Policy Institute. It's one of the most respected and best staffed groups, think tanks, that's the word, think tanks in Washington, D.C., okay? They research all kinds of public policy issues. They make recommendations to the National Board of Directors. The National Board of Directors, I should have mentioned this, is all volunteers. Nobody's paid. And it's chaired by a national president who's a volunteer. The board of directors, the nonprofit board and volunteer board of directors, makes policy issues. And then, like maybe on Medicare, Social Security, then we communicate that to elected officials. Okay?
So they are the one who makes decisions for Medicare and other benefits.
Yeah, for those of you who can't hear, they make decisions about what positions we take on Medicare and other issues, Social Security, yes, and many other issues.
Are we allowed to vote for them, or are we allowed to vote for these people?
Are you allowed to vote for the national volunteers or national board of directors? No. But if you are a member, and if you're over 50 and you become a member, you will have a voice within the organization. But there's no voting, no. The board of directors is basically self-perpetuating.
You pay for the membership?
The membership is $16 a year. And you'll make up for that just on restaurant discounts and hotel discounts if you stay at hotels. Most of the money comes from the for-profit subsidiary, so they're able to offer the membership at a very low rate and provide all their services. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. If there are other questions, feel free to interrupt me, okay? I'd like to keep it kind of informal. I will feel free to say, I'll get to that later. or
50 years can just go ahead and pay the 16 and
yes,
be a member.
yeah. And you're obviously not 50 yet, but
My husband is 50, so I want
your husband is 50. They usually find you when they're 50. They have ways of finding out. They found me. Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's a good question. The question is, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Dementia is a very broad term that has to deal with the mental decline when people get old. There are many different diseases under the category of dementia. Alzheimer's is one, okay? That's one disease, but there are other diseases that involve dementia. I mentioned my mother having those strokes. That was a cardiovascular, I forget what it's called, but it's a cardiovascular disease. What she had was considered a form of dementia, yes, because she lost her intelligence. But it was not Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the biggest form of dementia, covered, most people, and probably more people. In that broad category of dementia, Alzheimer's would be the biggest subgroup, okay? Terrible disease, terrible disease. So feel free to interrupt me. We have until, I'm told, noon to get out of here, and so I'll watch the clock. So this is a presentation. Let me make sure I do it right. Is it showing up? Yeah. Okay. Prepare to care. This PowerPoint presentation was prepared by AARP nationally, and they make it available to speakers around the country like me. So what do family caregivers do? I think you know most of these things. You have to take time off work to escort an older relative to the doctors. You may change your job or switch to from a full-time position to a part-time position, so you have time to take care of an older relative. You use your lunch hour and other free time to run errands. Many things, and they're on there, and there's little notes. Coordinate care after a hospitalization. Communicate with healthcare professionals. Take people to doctor's appointments. Take people shopping. Many aspects. Now, Rosalind Carter was the wife of former President Jimmy Carter. Tremendous personality. And she said, there are 4 kinds of people in the world. See if you come under one of these categories. People who have been caregivers at some point in their life. People who are currently caregivers. Those who will be caregivers. or those who will need caregivers? Now, if you've been any of those, raise your hand. Come on now, come on. It's virtually 100%. At one time or another, every one of us is a caregiver or needs a caregiver. Now in the old days, in America, and this still, I think, is more common in your culture, the Islamic culture, the extended family, where different generations from the same family may be living together. And even if they're not living together, they have this tremendous responsibility to older people. And that's how, people throughout history have needed caregivers. But our society has changed, and we, like I mentioned before, my brother's in Seattle. My sister's now retired in Florida, and I live here, and now I live in Alexandria. Of course, our parents are both gone. But what about when I need a caregiver, And my son is in Maryland, so far. But, the American families have gotten kind of dispersed. Also, people are living longer. Life expectancy used to be like 45 years. People didn't get old, okay? They died of something else before they got old. Now, the average life expectancy in America is 80 years. 80 years. I'm 72. When my dad was my age, he'd been dead for 3 years, okay? And so the family has changed. And caregiving is the new normal. Like I said, everybody needs it or does it at some time or another. So today's caregivers, they juggle a job along with their caregiving. Typically, by national surveys AARP has done, typical period would be 4 years. But I told you, with my mother, it was 20 years. At first, it wasn't too bad, but she went downhill and she lost her intelligence. Often, the caregivers also are raising children of their own. So now they're caught in between. They're taking care of an aging parent, and they got teenage kids running around. And they have to learn to undertake medical tests. I had to learn how to give my dad medication and things like that, and take care of his medication. Some have to learn how to handle oxygen. I never had to do that. So are you prepared to care? Are you? Are you prepared to care? You're already caring for brain injured husband. Okay. So you each have the booklet, Prepare to Care. That booklet has a 5-step plan, and I'm going to briefly go through it, but you can take it home for your reference. Also, at the end of that booklet is a list of resources, including a 1-800 number at AARP that you can call. And it also has a glossary of terms. Every field has its own language. And so, and if I use words that you don't understand, raise your hand, because sometimes I slip into it and use words that other people don't normally use. But there's a glossary of terms at the end. Also, feel free, Stacy didn't pass these out, because not everybody may want it, but resources for family caregivers in Northern Virginia on a county-by-county basis. One page of where you can go to get help. Every county has some type of aging department of aging, and they have social workers who are employed there. And they're there to give people help who have questions about being family caregivers. It's your taxpayer dollars at work, folks. Take advantage of it. I had a friend, I had a membership at a gym, and I had a friend there, and he's telling me in the locker room, this guy was a retired teacher, but he owned some rental properties. He says, I got this old guy. He's living in one of my rental properties, one of my apartments, and I can tell he's going downhill. And there's papers piled all over the place inside, and he doesn't seem to have any family come visiting him or anything. I said, contact the county aging department. They have social workers there who can help you out. He says, I don't want to get government involved. I said, this is why you pay taxes. They're there to help you. And they know, they'll make them a visit. They won't even know you were the one who made the phone call. They'll go knock on the door and say, we'd like to visit you. We're from the county. They know how to do this. They do it every day. And then they'll do an assessment and give that man some help. So the first step, and it's in the book, is start the conversation. That's often kind of hard. Nobody wants to, talk about, oh, gee, Dad's going downhill. What are you going to do? He's driving funny. We have to take the keys. You got to start somewhere. And so those of you, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, whoever else is involved, grandchildren, neighbors, friends, who's ever close to that person, and the person themselves, don't leave the person who needs care out of it. They've got to be involved every step of the way. You've got to give them as much power over their life as they can. But you've got to get started, and somebody has to start it. So it may as well be you. Okay. Yes, you have a faith organization here. Imams, yes. Yeah, help from the community. And I noticed, I checked out the website, you already do some of these services here. I was very impressed with your website. I just checked it out yesterday, but when I knew I was coming here. So a lot of this is already given by your center here. But you got to start somewhere. And start with the, and maybe you're not the one, okay? You may recognize it, but you say to your sister, you really have kind of a better relationship with Mom. So why don't you bring Mom into this? And so every family situation is different. Yes, ma'am. The caregiver needs a psychologist, or yes. Yeah, part 5, the plan is take care of yourself, and I'll come to that.
Is it free? Can they get the services for free?
Can they get the services for free? The county would certainly have some services for free. If they need some extensive ongoing thing to deal with their depression. She was asking about caregiver who's dealing with their own depression. Maybe they have insurance to cover it. You know how our healthcare system is all, Yes, ma'am. Who has sources to help you deal with depression? Mental health professionals. Yeah. And there are mental health professionals in each county government, too, that are there. It's a good place to start if you don't know where else to start. Yeah. Good question. Pardon? Oh, the question was, if you're suffering from depression, where do you get mental health help? And I say, well, go to the county Department of Social Services has people, and they'll at least get you started. You may need some ongoing care. Maybe your insurance coverage covers it, but they'll help you get started. But you got to start the conversation. When is the right time? Maybe you can raise the issues indirectly. Mom, I noticed that, are you still paying your bills on your own? I asked my mother that one time. She says, yeah, but it's hard, Pat. A little later, my sister took over handling her bills. Show your concern. You're acting out of your love for this person and your compassion for this person who's been such an important part of your life. And you're going to get some pushback. Be prepared for it. You may have to push a little yourself, okay? But you got to get it started. Overcoming resistance. Usually you involve other people who are involved. You figure out who's most likely to be able to, to help Mom or Dad deal with this and face up to it. Got to tell you, we got my mother into an assisted living community. She agreed. Oh, you know how we did that? Okay. We knew we could tell Mom was ready. She was living independently, and it was time for assisted living. And in the community she was in, it was a community where they watched their older people. They contacted us. They contacted me and said, Pat, we need to have a conference call with you and your brother and your sister. We think it's time for your mother to move from independent living to assisted living. I said, oh boy, this is going to be big. So we had the conference call, and they convinced us. Well, then my brother and I went, and we met with my mother's doctor, okay? And anytime there was something important going on, at least 2 of the 3 of us would go. So our sister sat this one out, and my brother and I went. And we went with Mom's doctor, and he was who happened to be the medical director of this retirement community. And he was her personal physician. So we said, they convinced us, the staff convinced us it's time for Mom to go to assisted living. We want you to tell her it. Because her regeneration, that generation that grew up in the Depression, fought World War II and all that, tremendous respect for what the doctor says. Said, we would like you, doctor, to recommend that she move into assisted living. He says, oh, yeah, I can do that. I'm familiar with her case. I said, well, you write it on a prescription pad. He said, yeah, I'll write it on a prescription pad. Then my brother and I left. Then he called my mother in and gave her a medical examination. After that, he called my brother and me in. And he looks my mother in the eye, and she respected this doctor. Oh, he loved older people. He loved older people. And he says, Louise, he says, I just examined you medically, and I can tell that you've had some more of those little strokes. And I really think it's time for you to move into assisted living here at Asbury Heights. Well, if that's what you say, doctor, okay. Case closed. Thought that was, but they didn't have a room ready for her yet. So we had to get, a home health aide to go in. She was still living independently. We'd have to wait maybe a couple of months for a room to be available in assisted living. So my sister hired a home health aide to go and help Mom. First day, Mom fired her. Then my sister said, hey, you're the healthcare guy in the family. You take over this issue. I said, okay. So I called a second home health care agency, and I told them exactly what happened. My sister lined up a caregiver, a professional home health caregiver, and Mom fired her. And she said, look, Betty and I will go out. Betty's a caregiver. This woman was a supervisor. We'll go out and we'll visit your mom, and we'll talk to her, and we'll just sit down and get to know her, and I'm sure it'll work out. Woman called me back the next day and said, Pat, your mother is not a candidate for home health care. She is totally uncooperative. So I went in, and we didn't have time for my brother and sister to come in, so I made a trip myself. I lined up another agency, and a woman was going to come over, and the day that the woman was going to come over, I sat down on the sofa next to my mother, and I said, Mom, with all the love I have in my heart for you, all the love I have in my heart for you, Molly's going to be here in a little while. All the love I have, you cannot fire Molly. Only Marie, my sister, and I, only we can fire Molly. We have power of attorney. That's the way it is, Mom. That's what you kids want. But she accepted. And Molly came over, and they got along great. Yes? Did you have a question? Oh, okay. So, you involve other people. Whatever you have to do, you're going to get some resistance. How am I doing on time? Okay, I better move along. Form your team, okay? Form your team, whoever it is, brothers, sisters, friends, imam, whatever. Include the difficult family member, okay? Because if somebody is difficult, hard to get along with, you want to include them because they'll just cause you trouble later down the road. And then designate a team leader. Somebody's got to take the lead. Doesn't have to be you. It can be somebody else in the family. You are going to have family conflicts. Somewhere after taking care of Mom for a number of years, I got to watch the time here, I thought my brother and sister and I were doing real well. And all of a sudden, one day, my brother and I, we get an email from our sister who says, I'm going to have to take the two of you out of my affection for a period of time. And she essentially didn't think we were carrying our load. And we thought we were. But her perception was, my brother and I weren't doing enough. It didn't matter if she was wrong or right. I cried. I cried that day. And I almost never cry, My dad wouldn't let me cry when I was a kid because men aren't supposed to cry, right? So it's hard for me, but I cried that day. And over time, we healed. But, one time I said to my sister, I says, Marie, every time I visit Mom, she says she feels bad for you because you don't have any daughters. You have 2 sons, and you have 5 wonderful grandchildren, but you don't have any daughters. And Mom says, every woman deserves a daughter. You boys would do anything I asked, but there are some things just a daughter understands. And my sister said, oh, Pat, thank you for telling me that. That was the issue. It wasn't that my brother and I, we thought we were caring. Mom was leaning more on my sister and leaning on her, not just to help her, but emotionally, okay? So anyhow, but every family situation is different. Just expect that you're going to have conflicts in the family. Things are going to come. It brings out the best and the worst in families. That I can tell you. It brought out the best in my family. It brought out some of the worst. Deal with it. But you're not alone. You have a committee. Make a plan. Host a family meeting. Remember, involve the person. Involve the person who needs the caregiving. Somebody takes notes, and somebody summarizes the next steps. So you have a meeting, somebody takes notes, the person that you're talking about is at the meeting, you're not doing this behind the person's back, and then somebody summarizes the next steps. Plans change, guess what? You know, like I said, Mom was doing well, and living independently, but then we had to get her into assisted living. Later on, she fell and broke her hip. We had to get her into a nursing home. And so plans will change as the person declines or as the situation changes. So you don't just have a one-time plan and then you're done for good. No. Yes, ma'am. What's the difference between assisted living and a nursing home? There's several levels of care, okay? One would be home care. One would be living independently, as Mom did. Then the next is assisted living. You need some help in some of your daily activities, clothing, feeding, keeping track of your medications, whatever. You don't need full nursing home care. Then the final step is nursing home care, which is kind of the last step. You're really very dependent on an organization to take care of you. My mother, we kept her out of the nursing home, I mentioned, to the last 6 months of her life, and that was after she fell. She lived for many years in assisted living. Part of that was in what they call a dementia center, which is really a dementia center, but which is really assisted living but specializes on dementia. So she was there for a long time. Got wonderful care. She loved being there. And we got to know the staff. We and the staff would hug when we showed up. They're wonderful. Friend who's not being care of by a nursing, what's the situation? Is she living at home or is she in a nursing home? Oh, in a nursing home, but the care is not that good. Yeah, I mean, this is a difficult thing. You want to try to find out something about that nursing home. There are nursing homes, the quality of care varies. Some are very good, some aren't so very good. Maybe you have a network of people that you know are in a similar situation. Maybe that person from the county social services may know, or they may know. There may be ratings on some of these. There are ways of getting information. But there's some nursing homes out there I wouldn't want to have my mother in, I tell you that. Plans change, I mentioned that. Oh, here we go. Okay, find support. Some things are listed in the book. Community resources, consult professionals, consult imams. If your center here provides a certain amount of support and information, and home health aides. And then, as I said, you can come and pick this up if you want, which is caregiving. It's really the different aging departments in each county in Northern Virginia. So this Prepare to Care is national information. This is local. Some of these have different pictures on the cover. The information inside is all the same. But we also have them available in Spanish, and I understand they're coming out with one in Chinese, but I don't think any Middle Eastern or South Asian languages yet. Take care of yourself. You were mentioning depression among caregivers. They get depressed because they feel so overwhelmed by the problem they're dealing with. and seeing this family member or a loved one decline. So you got to find time for yourself. You got to try to find some balance. Because if you get sick, you can't be a caregiver. If you're sick, you're no longer a caregiver. You need a caregiver yourself at that point. So you got to take care of yourself. And when asked, caregivers often say that the most difficult part is the demand on their time. So I've enjoyed this. We have we have a lot of time left for any further questions. I'm glad you raised questions as we moved along. But are there any other questions or any points that anybody wishes to share at this point? Yes, ma'am. I'm not an expert on how to find jobs, but usually AARP does at the national level have a department or has some professional staff that will help people find jobs or tell you where to find them in your community. And I'm not an expert. If I were, I lost my last job when I was 61 and I couldn't get another one. So I didn't do a very good job for myself. But there are resources available. I would suggest maybe contact AARP nationally, and they may give you some help. I don't know, does anybody else have suggestion on how to find a job? Or where to get in? Oh, okay. I think you were next, and then you. So the answer to finding a job when you're a caregiver, social services, which is a unit of the government, local county government, and they have people there who can be a resource and can help you find a job, or at least tell you how to go about it. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes. Cost. Oh, cost of assisted living or nursing home. Assisted living is around $50,000 a year. Nursing homes around $100,000 a year. And home health is about $25,000 a year. I'm glad you asked. Home health, $25,000. Assisted living, $50,000. Nursing home is now over $100,000 for a good nursing home. Very expensive. Yeah, good luck. That's what I say. I have enough money to last me. You know, I'm not wealthy, but I had a good career, and I have retirement savings, and I have a pension plan, and I have Social Security. I like to say I have enough money to last me the rest of my life. Unless I end up in a nursing home, then it'll all go in 1 year. Let me just tell you one other thing about AARP and how it got started. Dr. Percy Andrus, that was a woman. The doctorate was in education. And she was a teacher, a college teacher, and I think the first female, not college teacher, she was a high school teacher in California. She was the first female high school, what do they call them, superintendent? Principal. She was the first female high school principal in the state of California in the 1940s. When she retired, she got involved in forming the California Retired Teachers Association. And one time, Dr. Andrus, she wanted to find this old friend of hers who was a retired school teacher. And it took her a little fun. She had to ask around. And she found out that this retired school teacher was living in a chicken coop. In a chicken coop. Because she couldn't afford to live in a chicken coop. Chicken coop is maybe on a farm or in somebody's backyard. It's where they raise chickens to lay eggs. Okay, that's what a chicken coop is. There are chickens there that lay eggs that we all eat. So because the woman couldn't afford a regular home. And she said, she's a retired teacher. No retired teacher should have to live in a chicken coop. So Dr. Percy Andrus got very involved in the California Retired Teachers Association, and then in forming the American Retired Teachers Association. And one of the things, and this was before Medicare was enacted. Now we're in the 1950s, okay? So World War II is over. We're in the 1950s. And it was before Medicare was enacted, because Medicare was not enacted until 1965. And she just saw all these retired teachers and other retired people who didn't have health insurance. So she started going to insurance companies to see if they would provide health insurance for older people. She had to go to 40 companies before one of them said, yes, we'll do that. That's how AARP originally got involved in endorsing health insurance. So then when Medicare was enacted, Medicare became the primary payer, and Medicaid for low-income people, for poor, was enacted the same year, 1965. They were both enacted in 1965. Then a lot of companies wanted to provide supplemental health insurance for people on Medicare. And the principal company who does that right now for AARP is United Healthcare. But I'm not here to sell United Healthcare, okay? I don't have United Healthcare. I have Kaiser for my insurance, so I'm a volunteer. We don't any of those products that AARP endorses, I don't have anything to do with that. I'm just a volunteer. I'm here to share what I can. But that's how AARP got involved initially in health insurance. It was because they had members who didn't have health insurance. Any other questions or anything? So Dr. Andrus is really one of my heroes, and I've read her biography. The current president, or current CEO of AARP is Jenkins, what's her first name? But anyhow, Dr. Jenkins is the current CEO. We have a national president who's volunteer. We have Janet Jenkins is the CEO, and she has written a book called Disrupt Aging, and it's really about changing the culture. There's so much negative perception in our aging, in our culture about aging. So she has written a book called Disrupt Aging, and it's really disrupt ageism is what it's people's perception. You've been a great audience. I appreciate great questions, and I hope you learned something. And you've got resources there. You got the book, and if you want the local resources, it's up on the page, up on the table. And I really enjoyed it. Great questions. Good luck.